I hope I have a Kleenex. What'd you do with your Kleenex, man?
You can come back this way, dear.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll get it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry for that. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today. I'm Samantha Studebaker-Carnell, broadcasting to you from beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm here with my little buddy, Christian, who is my grandson. He's my youngest grandson, or my youngest grandchild. And then I'm also here with my good friends Dan and Karen, who you can see in the background there. And today we are going to continue our discussion of the book Your Soul's Plan by Rober Schwartz. And I think we're kind of heading in the direction of chapter 5, but we've been kind of talking about chapter 3 and chapter 4, and just kind of jumping around all over the place. So. But before we get going with that, for those of you who are watching, if this is interesting to you, then click like below on the video, and you can also meet us in our Facebook group. If you go to mindsetmasterycollective.com, it'll take you into our Facebook group. And if you'd like to participate, of course you can. So before we get going, though, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll get this talk going.
I'm Karen Lohoff, and I live in Mesa, Arizona, and we've just made some record highs with the weather. We were at 118 on Thursday. Now, that's not our record high temperature for a day. I think our record high temperature for a day is 122, but for now, Thursday was pretty crispy. Friday was 116. And it topped our month as the hottest month ever. I think they've been keeping records since 1895. And so of all the months ever, this July of 2020 has been the hottest one. So if you have found me a little bit droopy, then attribute it to that.
My name is Dan Sisik. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we're like right behind you, Karen. We got up to, I think, 114 or something the other day. We were near our record for that date the other day and stuff. But yeah, it's getting warm here too, and I think they said our highest record for that date was 118, I think, like Thursday or something like that. So yeah, we're definitely a part of that heat wave that's going through along here.
Morning, Sandy. Jump out and introduce yourself if you like.
Do you hear me?
I hear you now.
My sound is being, my speakers are off. I don't know. Sorry. Hi, I'm in Miami Beach. We're supposed to get a hurricane today, but I think it's a scam because it's sunny and I don't really think it's happening. But yeah, good to be here, and hopefully my speaker works because I can't hear you all clearly.
All right, welcome. Yeah, hopefully it is a scam. I like that term. That's a good one. I haven't heard that before. Yeah, I thought I saw something about a hurricane coming up from Guatemala or something. I don't know, somewhere down there in the Caribbean, I guess. I don't know. So hopefully it won't hit you. It looked like it was going to go more up the East Coast than necessarily Miami, but that was yesterday when I was looking at it. It could have changed all the way to pointing at Texas now, for all I know.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of interesting what she called it, her scam, because I know in Hawaii, I've got a friend, she lives in Hawaii now, been there like 4 or 5 years, and they had that one that came by for them that was supposed to be headed right at, and everybody was kind of making memes and fun. I mean, it was scary because they thought it was going to be a direct hit, but they were making memes about, oh, it passed by landing here because of the 14-day quarantine. It decided it didn't want to be quarantined, so it went the other direction. So hopefully it'll do the same thing there in that area and avoid hitting landfall and not causing any problems.
Definitely not coming to Miami. They got us all locked down on top, and then on top of it, telling us that there's a hurricane, tropical storm coming. Okay, maybe. It looks like the hurricane's going to go more north, but it's not coming here. And I don't think it's going to be a hurricane. It's a tropical storm. Just more fear-mongering bullshit. I'm done with it.
Yeah, I'm there too.
Fear-mongering right now. The world is filled with full fear-mongering bullshit. It's ridiculous. Beyond. I'm done with it. Where's Catherine?
You're muted, Dan.
Oh, Catherine's helping one of her friends. Hang on, I'm looking up the message that we got from her. A friend of hers named Jerry had a heart procedure, and she barely has a phone signal where she's at helping the friend out. But she says she'll try to get on, but don't count on it. So she's helping a friend out. But well, Samantha had to step away for a second, so I know that we've been working and talking about chapters 3 and 4, and I think we want to try and kind of wind up any thoughts or anything like that with that. So just to kind of reiterate, chapters 3 and 4, we're talking about. I remember the one guy, I can't remember his name right offhand, that dealt with being diagnosed with AIDS and being gay and all that and everything, and all the stigma and everything that went through that, and how he had pre-planned to be a part of that, and how those in his family in his soul group, those who have been, I guess, his parents before in the past, who said that they would do this again for him and help him go through and live through that, and to come out with that experience and to understand it better and to learn how to, I think, and I may be mixing some of my stuff up, communicate better and things like that, or I may be mixing it up with the other story in there. But and we went over all those things and how I think we all have our own things of what we feel like we've gone through, and just part of our, overall journeys, I guess, is the best way to say it, and how, we all have questions and things that we're still trying to get answered and figured out. So I'll open it up to you guys to throw out anything else that you want to add before we maybe start into chapter 5, which is dealing with, I think, like drug addictions.
Sometimes when I listen to some of you talk, my brain starts to veer off in a different direction. And where that happened today with Dan talking was when he said, well, I may have my stories mixed up, and I may have, this or whatever. He didn't, I don't think he used the word confused, but I find myself through the week as I look at TV shows, and I'm not one who spends a lot of time or intends to spend a lot of time with the television, but being in this home where I have a roommate whose entire day is the television, and it's right there where it has to be loud enough for her to hear, for it to penetrate me, no matter what I have on my ears. I have caught probably more television than in any other time. And as I look at those shows, and even watching people who have gotten really clever at enjoying the parts of the times of the pandemic by creating their skills, their talents to a higher degree. I'm thinking about this book. I'm thinking about, did this person intend to experience this in this life? I wish I could remember the show that I got so caught up in. I don't know if you remember this. This was a show from some time ago, and it had Drew Barrymore in it. And I think it was interesting. The next day, they had a television snippet that she's beginning a show, and she's interviewing herself as a child using parts from the Johnny Carson show when she was a child on the Johnny Carson show. So now in her show, she as a mother is interviewing herself. I realize I'm going all over the the circus, but
those things that you use at night.
But anyway, in the original show that I saw Drew Barrymore in, she and Adam Sandler fall in love with each other, but she's had the accident with the cow. I guess you can remember that, Dan. That's cool. And she wakes up each morning. It's kind of like that, that show that starts the same day over every day. And she doesn't know Adam Sandler because she didn't know him before the accident. And so he does all kinds of crazy things to get her attention every day. I was thinking back, did he know that when he had to do that? But anyway, I reflect a lot on this idea of attempting to think up what it is that we would learn the most from, and deciding, to get our soul group around and different people to play different roles. And I just think this is such a fascinating go. And I wanted to mention, I don't think I did mention this before, regarding blindness. When I drove taxi for a couple of years, I often picked up a couple, and both of them were blind. And I would take them from the area of ASU to downtown Phoenix to, I can't think of his first name, but Brokaw. It was a school downtown, Brokaw School of Broadcasting. And it always amazed me that they would be waiting for me at a particular place. They would know when I was coming up. They would open the back door and get in and scoot over. They had a guide dog, and the guide dog took up the whole middle hump of the back seat. And then when they got out, they would use their guide dog and their sticks, and they would get to the door of the other school, the broadcasting school. And they didn't need my help. They never needed me to get out and, put my elbow out and grab my elbow and say, we're looking for this or we're looking for that. And I always found them so so independent. I remember one time I picked them up and they were going to go to the airport and they were going to go on this trip, but they had all these bags by the door. And I thought, how did they find all the stuff that they needed to put in their bags? Blind people have always amazed me. They really seem to figure it out. And so I think there's so many purposes for, whatever path we each choose for our lives. I feel a lot more ding dongy than most of the people I notice.
I'm glad you brought that up, Karen. One thing I've kind of noticed in the theme of these few chapters, and they've talked about this a little bit, is one of the reasons that that they're saying that souls incarnate is to experience limitation, whereas as the soul or the spirit entity, there's no limitation. When they think of things, they appear instantly, or they have this creative energy that just makes things happen instantaneously. And when they incarnate in the human body, it creates a massive amount of limitation. And so one of the reasons that they're saying that they want to do that is so that they can learn how to overcome the frustrations involved with being limited in so many different ways. And so when somebody incarnates as a handicapped person, that creates additional limitations. Or if they incarnate as someone who is blind or deaf, it's additional limitations. And sometimes those limitations create opportunities that would otherwise not be available to them because they are, sorry, my grandson's climbing over here. Goodness. So speaking of limitations and frustrations, we all have these things in our life that in one way or another, they either limit us or they create frustrations, like what you were talking about, Karen. I can only imagine when you have a roommate and they maybe like to watch something different than what you like to watch, and then that can be frustrating. Or like when I'm trying to do a Saturday morning mastermind and I have this little guy here who is wanting to do something completely different. And but we have to realize that these are opportunities for us to figure things out or grow in a different way, or work on our patience, or work on compromise, or all of those different things. And so I think that's just one of the biggest messages this book is trying to point out, is that we come here purposefully knowing that we're going to forget, kind of like that 51st Dates movies where you were talking about Drew Barrymore. Like, she was waking up every day and forgetting. So imagine the limitations there. But we have a whole lifetime where, each time we do something, we just start a whole new lifetime and do it differently. But we have different limitations every time we come in here. And so we get to learn different things from those experiences. And that's apparently the whole point of all of it. So
I was gonna say, it's interesting what you brought up about the blindness too. Also, growing up, we had a dog, Scooter, who lived to be 17 or 18. She lived to be an old dog, but she had a heart problem, and we had to give her a pill for her heart. But she was blind. But this dog could maneuver our house, uh, you know, without anybody helping her, telling her where things were, or making sure she didn't bump into stuff. Now, periodically, every now and then, when as kids felt the need to think we were going to have some fun and mess with her, and we would move furniture every now and then just to watch her bump into it and get in big trouble with our mom because we were doing that. Um, but it was interesting to see how that can take over with animals even too. They can learn and be pretty much sufficient for the most part because she could walk around, she could go lay down, go get on this. She didn't get up on the furniture because on that, but she knew where the furniture was and she would lay down. And or if we were down on the ground in our beanbag, she might come over and lay by us, whatever. But it was interesting to see her, in that aspect, and go outside and go into the yard and be able to move around the yard. It's just now, as I think back, the capacity to learn the familiar. And if you've done it enough times, even growing up in the, I could be dead asleep, wake up, be half awake, and still walk throughout my house and not hit anything either. So even in that, semi, state of being awake and asleep, you know, so it's interesting how our senses really do help in our overall things that we do. And I've heard that they say when you lose one sense, the other four tend to get more heightened in what they do to help pick up for the compensation, so that way you can still adequately and do things and stuff like that. So that's interesting, and that might be part of what this book is also helping to understand, that when we go through these journeys, that this is to help us, even though they're um I don't want to necessarily call them handicaps, but they're what, according to the book, people choose to do in the life, in that lifetime, to help then when you get when you finish your life and you get to that, the other side. It gives you it heightens that, everything there even more, to where you understand it better, and you can, I guess, I don't want to say relate, but function, or you have a better appreciation, I guess, maybe, for the word, of what was going on in that life when you complete this life and go and back to your soul group.
Well, again, that reminds me about hearing about the um, or reading about the man who had killed his his partner and then himself, and so the youngster wanted to be deaf in the next life and not hear that. And that little portion about that man, and that he had had 6 or 7 lifetimes before of being rageful and violent. And I guess what I would enjoy is if Robert Vaughn would have taken, of course, how would he find this man? I don't know how he would find this man, but because he wasn't alive in that lifetime. Um, Actually, I think I do know how he might find that man, but I would be interested for someone to interview people who really struggle with something like that. You mentioned you talked, I think 2 or 3 of you talked after I mentioned that before, about problems with anger. It happens that I have a caregiver here who is she is so caregiving. She's so compassionate. She really takes the time to work with each individual person with the things that she knows that they especially enjoy and need. And, no one here has any additional time. I mean, I'm talking about the people who give care there, hopping back and forth. I have something knocking over here. Anyway, I asked her yesterday, I think it was, I said, have you always been so compassionate and calm and kind? She said, well, I do at times have a temper. And then because she knows that we've kind of shared some information with each other that uh, that's a little bit different. She said, a lot of my temper ended after my first husband died. But anyway, it's interesting when you see the different people and you realize, I mean, she obviously chose to come in and be this calm person. The other caregivers are good and take time and all that kind of stuff, but she is just top of the summit as far as I'm concerned with that.
That's so nice that you have somebody there that that just has that extra that extra. I mean, that just makes a big difference, I'm sure. Excuse me. In this next chapter, chapter 5, where it's talking about a couple of stories, one of which is this woman who has a son who is addicted to heroin, and through this experience, he overdoses multiple times, and she happens to be a nurse in the baby the NICU. I think it's in that, or it's just the new baby area. Um, but anyway, because she's a nurse, she has some knowledge of uh, in some ways, but not relating to addicts. But what she ends up doing is, because of this experience with her son overdosing and her, she ended up reaching out to some online forums trying to get help from other people that were dealing with the same kind of things. Either A, they were addicts, or B, they were parents of addicts or family members of addicts. And so she kind of developed this community, and she started becoming more compassionate and sympathetic to people dealing with the same kind of things. And because of that, she ends up creating this program at her hospital for mothers that are, that are giving birth to babies that they have been addicts, and so they're dealing with all of that the issues that go along with that. So that there's some, um, so she starts having more compassion for other people that are going through this, because I guess prior to her own son, um, before she found out he was an addict, she was just very judgmental towards these women that would be on drugs and they'd be pregnant. And so, through her own experience, she developed that compassion. She developed more sympathy. And so they talk a lot about, that's one of the main themes in this particular chapter, is just this idea of coming here to experience something that is limiting. Like this whole thing was out of control. She had no control over what was going on with her son. So that created limits in her own ability to help him. And, um, and so she experienced frustration and limitation through that. But because of that, she was able to start this other program. And it also helped her to open up and and reach out to other people in that kind of niche of people, that so she could get support from them. And so it's just really interesting how these life experiences can change our whole entire perspective on things. And that's kind of the thing, is they keep talking about that's one of the things that we come here for, is just, in one section of the book it says we've done everything, we've tried everything, we've been here many times, and we've been we've been dictators, we've been murderers, we've been saints, we've been compassionate, we've been everything. And each time we come here, we want to experience something completely different, to learn some kind of lesson from it. And so it just kind of makes me wonder. I know that one of the things I have to work on is my patience, and that's been something that I've had to work on throughout my whole life. And for a lot of years, I worked as a pet groomer, and it requires never-ending amounts of patience to work with pets and get them to cooperate so that you can do what you need to do. And I did that for a lot of years, and then when I retired from doing that and moved on to other things, and I realized, okay, well, I had some patience for that, but then that kind of ran out, and I need to develop patience in other areas of my life. But anyway, that's it for now. I know I've been rambling. Somebody else step out.
I don't know. Do you have anything, Sandy, that you might want to share or join in with us, or are you still having speaker problems? Okay, well,
I don't know if she could even
I'll,
hear us if she does. Her speaker's not working, or maybe she just left
yeah,
in the background.
okay. Well, I know for me, I have my areas of things that kind of I have over the years I've realized that um, in a roundabout way I'm a people pleaser because of growing up and how I grew up with my real mom and stepdad. I'll be honest, I really don't like confrontation. I mean, learned that very early on because of those things. I'm not afraid to fight back, and I'm not afraid when I'm pushed, especially if I'm pushed into a corner. That's when all my hell and fury will let loose because I'll let loose of what I keep as my bit and bridle or whatever you call it, like on a horse that helps keep it from, um, I have the things I use for myself to, not lash out. But at the same point, I'm a people pleaser. I hate it when things happen and people do things, and there's certain things that trigger this. Um, and I know where it stems from. It stems exactly from one thing in particular that my mom did, and it always made me feel like I was inadequate, like she didn't love me, like there was something wrong with me, so that's why I go there. And I know that's something that I'm continually working on and something like that because you know I don't want to base everything about me based on what other people do or how other people say, but it's something sometimes that it's just so inbred and so innate in you sometimes that um, it's hard to change that. And like for me, it really irritates me and bugs me, like when, um, especially people I interact with, and um, they tend to not be as open or as uh, I'll use an example, like friends and roommates, where I've had roommates where they tend to just do their thing, kind of keep to themselves, and a lot of times go in their room, and then I take that as something personal against me because my mom did that as long as I can remember growing up. I don't remember a lot of times where she was really out and interactive with people and doing things like that. So in that sense, then I internalize it and take it and say, "What's wrong with me? Why do they do that?" Rather than, or when people don't call, I'll call them, say, "What's up?" or this, or at times when I call and say, "Hey, let's get together, go do something," and then they say, "Oh, I'm busy," or "I've done this," or it's like, I go hear that some friends go out and do something, and I'm like, "Well, I would have loved to join you. Why didn't you?" It becomes. And I think that's something that is one of the big things in my life that still I'm still working with and trying to sort out and trying to learn that I can't base everything off of what is the circumstances around me. I have to take some value in myself and realize that I do have inherent value, which I do, and I believe I do. I just sometimes let everything else crowd in and get in there and separate that over that thing that should be coming forth out of me to say no, I am this is okay. I don't need all of their approval for me to still be okay. That's some of what I'm learning and dealing with over the years that we've been doing this, and this book is helping me to realize that even more.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Dan, because I feel like that's one of the other big lessons that it's trying to get us to understand is many of these people have come into this life and they have tremendous life challenges, kind of like the guy that he was born into a very religious family, but he was gay. And so they all shamed him and treated him horribly, all because of this slight difference. And eventually he not only created more and more relationships in his life where he ended up being treated that way, but then he ended up in a bad relationship and he ended up with AIDS, and he had all this shaming from the public, and his whole area, the place that he lived in, was the whole neighborhood and friends and everyone was all just down on him. And so the biggest lesson that he had to learn in his life was that he had to have his own self-worth. He had to love himself. And he was so dependent on everyone else, but it wasn't until he really got to the point where he had love for himself that everything changed and was so much better. And then what everybody else thought didn't matter anymore. And it seems like there was another story in here that was similar to that, where the whole point of it was learning self-love. And I think a lot of times we struggle with that. We struggle with this idea that we're not good enough, or we're not, um, we don't do the right things. We have all this guilt because we should have done this or ought to do that based on what we've learned from our parents or friends or community or church or school or wherever. We just have all these ideas of what we're supposed to do. And if we aren't doing those things, then there must be something wrong with us, whether it is, our parents telling us that we aren't good enough, or our parents, teaching us something that causes us to struggle in life because of those, certain kinds of beliefs. And so we just have this, when we can read books like what we read, we've read so many different books where we realize that, it's our own internal thoughts that create our reality. And when we realize that, we can change how we feel. We can change how things happen in our lives. It's like that one book that we read that was What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. And when we read that book, I was really struggling at that time because my daughter was moving to South Carolina to go and be with her boyfriend's family. And I was just so upset about that. And the more that I thought about it, the more upset that I had become. But when I started changing the things I was talking to myself about, it, I changed my whole entire perspective on it, and then everything changed, and I'm, so much happier that I had done that, because if I hadn't, I'd still be mad about it. So, and it works the same way when we talk about, how we feel about ourselves. When we say things that are good, we say things that are positive about ourselves. And just like that, when you were talking, Dan, about when you have a roommate and your roommate wants to go into their room and have, time to themselves, those things that start going on in your head, you're like, oh, don't they like me? Don't they want to hang out with me? Don't like that. Those are the thoughts we're telling ourselves, right? But when you can say, oh, I guess he's just really tired tonight, or, maybe he's just feeling antisocial today. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It's not because I stink or something. We say nice things to ourselves instead. Then we're happy. We're like, oh, I get this time to myself. It's so nice when I can have some time to myself, and my roommate's not in my face or whatever. We can tell ourselves those things, and that changes how we feel. It's just weird how our thoughts make us feel, right? And so it all depends on what we're telling ourselves. So, okay. What's next?
Well, to answer that, it's interesting because a lot of times, there seems to be certain days where my roommate, she will be over at my former roommate's house, the one who was my roommate for 5 years, and who I admittedly said is like a son to me, and his daughter is very important, and I love them both dearly. And it seems like when she's not here, that's where she's at. So, but then when she's here, it's like when she's around him, she's kind of different. and then when she's here, she's and it's like, and it's kind of the dynamics are kind of weird too. But I am having to learn how to kind of go back to being more on my own, which I'm not crazy about. It's not a bad thing, but it's not something I have ever really um liked, because I've learned one thing. I don't really like necessarily being alone. I like.
Dang it. He fell off. We must have lost his signal again. That's where he has the worst internet connection. Sometimes he does great. Other times he sounded good and wasn't any choppy or anything, and then he just fell off. He'll be back though. He always comes back. What do you think, Karen? What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, the two of you were discussing learning to love yourself and those kinds of lessons, which I certainly have needed in this life. I was thinking how much my thoughts, my words to myself have changed regarding God. Um, how much easier a life I have with God, how much more a peaceful life or a relationship I have with God. From several of the books that we have read and discussed amongst ourselves with each other, I find this forum where we speak with each other, and we've formed relationships of caring and knowing each other as well as we have, really helps, because the reminders I find are needed. I think we probably all were drawn together for many of the same things, knowing, or at least learning, beginning to learn about how our thoughts create our lives, and um, uh, you know, keeping straight which comes first, thoughts or feelings, and then looking at that and changing, what we think, what we say, to be kinder to ourselves, to be more loving to ourselves. Um, I just think it's invaluable that we have this, uh, this way to help each other. Basically, I guess, come back around probably to what it was that we intended to accomplish in this life, because I really had gone towards, I think I probably mentioned again last week, although I'm not really sure, but I had a sweetheart who I knew loved me. We didn't have much time together, and at the end of our time together, he said, "You are negative. You have low self-esteem, and you think the worst of any possible situation." And I was quite certain I hadn't been that way most of my life. And I feel like I'm not that way in my life right now. But as I look back in my life and I look back over my journals, I see a roller coaster of being that way. And when I am negative, have low self esteem, and look at things in the worst possible way, my life goes so much more poorly than when I'm much more conscious, aware of these principles that we've learned from these various books and from our talks with each other, and it has helped me so much. Um, so that's my interim share while we missed you, Dan. Sorry.
To kind of try and remember what I was talking about and finish up. Um, but anyway, but getting back to a little bit. That's why I, you know, am getting more out of this book is like in hearing about how this woman before she would judge people a certain way and out of the stuff with her son, her she made that group and then her value thoughts and stuff changed about other mothers in the same situation as her, how she used to judge them before, but now she takes on a different and how you know out of this and then learning about her son, about I guess I don't know if she knew about her sons or going through learning about their son, why he did that was because he had magical experiences before where things seems to just always go right in his life. And but they in one of the readings that I was just reading, it seems like that in this life he kind of got some of those same magical aspects from doing the being addicted to the heroin, and by doing that. So in that sense, that he was trying to recreate the non-ordinary and magical stuff out of something, I guess, very what in this life he was living was very ordinary. And there are times where I look at my life and I'm thinking, oh my God, my life is just, I get up, I go do this, I do this, I come home, I do this. Where's the fun? Where's some of the things that, I like and enjoy doing? Because when I go do those things, I get that, that high and that feel of like, oh wow, this is so cool. And then the other times when I'm just doing the same old mundane thing, I don't necessarily hit rock bottom, but I kind of get into, and I can start getting into that mindset where I start, thinking that goes back to, like you said, being careful of what we say to ourselves, learning to understand that, you know, we have the power to take the circumstances and things we're in and to help change our perspective, which can immediately lift our vibrations and help us lift ourselves up to that higher plane. And I think sometimes, you know, we get caught up in that little spiral a little bit.
Poor Dan. Oh man. One of these days he's gonna get that computer situation sorted out. I wonder if it's just his internet connection. It's gotta be. I wonder if his computer is far away from his wireless connection or something. I have no idea. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Did you have any final thoughts, Karen, before we wrap up? I'm sure Dan will be back on here in a second. Or Sandy, did you want to jump out? I don't know if you can hear us or not. Oh wait, there he is. There you go. Oh, you weren't gone that long this time, Dan.
Okay. To make it short and sweet, I think what this book does is help us realize that we have a lot of depths and a lot of layers, and that um, there really is more to us than we all really know and fully understand fully, and that we are constantly learning as we go through. And I'll leave it at that. Hopefully, I won't get bumped off again. This program is really beginning to irritate me.
What I like to say is anyone who's been watching our videos that would like to join us, even for one time, we would really appreciate having you do that, getting to meet you and getting to have your shares with us. And you would probably grow to love us just like we love each other.
Absolutely, that's for sure, Karen. Yeah, I'm guessing that Sandy can't jump in. I don't know if she's having microphone issues or she's just busy in the background. But either way, we are past the top of the hour, so I'm just going to wrap it up for today. So For those of you who are watching, if you enjoyed this, please click like on our video, share it with anybody you think might find it helpful. Christian says, hey. And we'll see you again next week. If you'd like to join us on here, you can find us at mindsetmasterycollective.com. That'll take you directly into our Facebook group where you can ask to join and participate if you'd like to. So with that, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now. Bye.